So let's start with Athens. So people often just say, well, Athens was a direct democracy because people met um, up in a physical space and they debated about the laws of Athens. And if you were a citizen of Athens and a man and of the right age, then you were allowed to vote on it. And that is very, very, very roughly the case. Obviously, you couldn't be a slave. Obviously, you have to be a man, etc., etc. But it also was not actually true to the extent that lots of people simply couldn't go. Um, Most normal people were not allowed to speak, so they couldn't really debate. It was only certain people trained in rhetoric, or certain people with wealth and things like that, who were actually allowed to speak. So even if most people could go along and vote, which at certain times in Athens history that was broadly the case, it was much closer to direct democracy than the Roman Republic, for example. It's still, just be a bit careful if you say in ancient Athens every man who was not a slave could vote, because it's not quite as simple as that. Um, but it is fair to say that the authors of the Federalist Papers, the sort of some of the founding fathers of America, thought that there were dangers to having direct democracy like that. And what they much preferred was the Roman Republic. And obviously, the Roman Republic, just like ancient Athens, lasts over hundreds and hundreds of years. So, again, it's very difficult to say exactly what it was, but it's also much complicated than they had in ancient Athens. If you're interested in this, then this graphic here is one of the best graphics that I've found about how it works. You don't, to answer this question, unless you really want to focus on this as a historical example, if you do classics, for instance, or classical civilizations, then that might be an interesting idea. But otherwise, we don't need to go into much detail on this. The key thing, though, is that there was a constitution. It's a bit like Britain's, it was unwritten, but they really, really cared about tradition and guidelines and what had happened before. And therefore, that put a limit on what was allowed. So, what the consuls could do was heavily limited by what consuls had done before. So, even though there were some democratic elements, you can see the word elect here. So there was lots of bodies that did elect other bodies. So there were assemblies of the common people, the plebis or plebs, and they elected what's called the tribune of the plebs, which did have some power. However, they were representatives. You didn't just have all the people all in one place voting on one thing, although there are some examples of that happening on some issues in the Roman Republic. But basically, we'll see the reason that people like James Madison preferred the ancient Roman Republic is that although the people did have some say, and therefore you could get some advantages from having the people involved in politics to some extent, it was really the Senate, the consuls, members of certain families with large amounts of property and with who were in many ways prepared for the work of doing politics, and therefore in the Federalists' eyes were sort of more capable of doing politics. They had more time to do politics because they had property and things like this, and they were wiser as well, supposedly, than the mass of the population.